this video we will be talking about navigation, and we will be adding safe args to it. It's strongly recommended that you've seen my previous video about navigation or simple navigation, because we will be building upon that information, or that you know the very basics of creating a navigation graph, hooking up the nav host and doing that kind of stuff, because that is taken for granted. We're starting from a project that has all that built into it. What are safe args? Safe args are a means to pass data from one fragment to one fragment while navigation. It's a way so you're navigating from one fragment to another one and you want to pass some data from between the fragments. This is what we'll show how to be done in this video. It can also maintain argument type, and it's very strongly advised to use the types and not to infer the types. As a side effect, you'll also see a different navigation to write the code for navigating, and I think it's a nicer way of writing the code. What do we need in order to achieve this communication between the fragments while navigation? Well, first of all, we need the data we actually want to pass. Second thing is we need a mechanism or a method to pass the data. And in order to do that, we have to solve some technical issues. In the demonstration, we will do it in the reverse order. We will first see how to solve the technical issues. Then we will see the new method of navigation. And only at the end will we add the data which will fit into the solution we built up by having the technical issues and the method constructed for us. The technical aspect has a few things you have to add to the Gradle. To the project level Gradle, you have to add this code, which will be posted underneath the video. To the application level Gradle, you have to add these two pieces, one to the plugins section and one to the dependencies section. Also, this will be posted underneath the video. There's a third part which we will show the problem that happens if you don't add it and the solution. It is separated because you may not have to do that. According to the documentation, you don't have to do it, but I found you do have to do it. The data will be added in the nav graph, and putting it all together, it will look like this. You will have to build the new Gradle utilities and build the project which will generate some classes which will allow us to do the navigation a bit differently and pass the data. As I just said, we will use the generated classes for navigation and passing the data. And we'll discuss this. If the data if the classes aren't generated, you'll have to add this to your application level Gradle in order to get the classes to appear in the IDE. Now for the demonstration. We're back in Android Studio and we want to start off by doing the technical side. Well, we go to the build.gradle and we have to add here a few lines. I'll just copy them out of an existing project. For the build level Gradle, we have to copy this line here. Which tells us what navigation version we're going to use. And this line here, which tells us where to find the srcDirs plugin. So that's it for the build Gradle on the project level. Now let's go to the application level. We have to add the plugin. As we're using Kotlin, this is the plugin we have to use. If you're not using Kotlin, you can omit the Kotlin at the end, but that will generate slightly different files for your classes. So we have the plugin and we have to add the dependencies that we will add here. And we've added the dependencies for the new way of navigation. After doing what's written in the documentation, we can rebuild the project. And according to the documentation, now we're supposed to see underneath the generated Java a few files, a few classes which are supposed to help us with the navigation. But as you see, they don't appear here. To solve that, what you have to do is add these lines here, which essentially what they do is add to the source set under the main Kotlin the navigation-args folder or package. And now when we do it, we see the IDE recognizes the Kotlin folder and it has under it these classes here. Now as you can see, this is fragment1 to fragment2 and fragment2 directions, fragment1 directions, and we will now go and see how we can change the way we navigate using these. So we hop into fragment1, and in fragment1 our navigation now is done by using this line here. If you remember from the previous video, navigation, find nav controller, viewer, and here we navigate, and we navigate by the action which we generated in the XML. Now we're going to do it differently. We're going to do val action1 equals and fragment1 directions, okay? Frag1 directions dot, and what do you want? We want an action fragment1 to fragment2. And this action, let's call it action, a bit of a better name here, will replace this, which I don't actually like, and this will be the action we use. And similarly for the action here, we will use action fragment1 to fragment3 and call it the same, action1 to fragment3. And that will be the way we're going to navigate. The same in fragment2. Let's just take this so it's faster to type it out. Here we're going to go fragment2 to fragment3, and the information is in fragment2 directions, and there will be only one action there. Action fragment2 to fragment3. And this will work exactly the same. Just to prove my point, let's run it. Here's the emulator. Go from fragment2 to fragment3. Go to fragment3. Go back and go back. And also this one works. So far we've seen an alternative way of defining the navigation using what I think is nicer code without all this r.id. all kind of unsightly things. But we haven't added any information. So now we will go to the resource navigation graph. Let's add information which we want to send from fragment1 to fragment2. Then we hit fragment2, go to arguments on the right, and we want to add a number. Let's call it number, and it's an integer, and let's give it a default value of 123. Now let's use, now we have to rebuild the project. And notice on the left here we had fragment1 directions and fragment2 directions. Now we have fragment2 arguments. These are arguments which are going to belong to fragment2. How are we going to get them from fragment1 to fragment2? Okay, we have to go to fragment1, and we want to send these arguments. The one place we have to add information is here in the parentheses. If we don't add them, we have our default value, but let's write 456 as the information. No, it's not in here, it's all the way up here. 456, and yes, it automatically detects this is going to be called number. So that's all we have to do on fragment 1 side. Okay, so here we're over in fragment 2, and now we have to get the information out of the arguments sent over here. Then let's write a field which will accept them. Args, and it already knows we want frag2 args by nav-args. Let's add the include. Here is the include added, and we have the arguments field. Now let's go down to our function all the way down here. And let's say that we have a var n equals vargs.number. So we have the number, and just to show that we have the information, let's set the text let's move all this out to here. Text dot text equals to n dot toString. So let's go over what happened here. Up the top we defined a field that we are calling args. It will be of the type fragment2 arguments. This is generated by what I just showed you, and it works by delegation to the nav-args. In our onCreate view, we are taking the information out of args, putting it into a local variable, and setting the text of this on this fragment to be n, just to show that the number came through. Now, one important thing to note is this is a val. It's not a var, it's a val, otherwise it doesn't work. So let's recompile and rebuild and see it running. So we go to fragment 2, and you see 456 here. Remember, the default value is 123, so this shows that the information did actually go through. So that's all for the demonstration. I hope this was useful to someone out there. If you found it useful, please like, consider subscribing, write a positive comment underneath. If for some reason you didn't like it and you dislike the video, please also leave a comment so I know how to improve it next time. Thank you and goodbye.